Welcome back to Out and About Today. I'm Pam Wheeler, joined by my hosts, Brent and Chuck. We're talking about President Biden. In the last 7 days or so, Biden has signed some executive orders. A couple really connect with our community. He lifted the ban on transgender people serving in the military, which we know that was a punch in the gut 4 years ago. He also signed one very recently on gender identity so that trans young women can compete in women's sports. You know, this is great news to our ears. Not everybody feels that way. Tell me your thoughts when these come rolling out. Chuck?
Well, one thing, again, kind of an overall feel is a sense of security. It just, because for 4 years, these last 4 years, that rug kept getting pulled out from under us, whether it was the gay wedding cake or whatever the situation was. It was just one thing after the other, or adoption, all of those things. And so with each one of these executive orders, that Biden is signing into place, I just feel better, and I feel safer. And that's what I think we're going to continue to see. And that's to me, the overall nice arching theme of it.
Brent?
Yeah, I agree with that. And just to see the happiness, not just amongst like us, the three of us, but to see other people, actual trans individuals, seeing this and feeling welcomed again and feeling like they are a part of society, especially given since when he did sign the original order banning them, we saw an increase in the last 4 years of trans murders, especially trans women of color. So hopefully some of this rhetoric will sort of help die that down a little bit. But the only thing that I hate to see this, and we were talking about this during the break, is if these are all executive orders, I'd like to see policy behind them. It would be great to see policy so that it's not the next Republican president that comes in can quickly undo all of this with the stroke of a pen, and then we've swung back the other way. So I love it. It's a great victory, but we still need to push for the policy to support it.
Right. I know that makes total sense. And I do want to talk about something that Chuck brought up earlier in the first segment about the other side. We know millions, 75 million people voted for Trump. Now they're probably not all Trumpers, Trump anything, but they're feeling some heartbreak right now. And it hasn't been lost on me that a lot of people didn't want Joe Biden. Now, how do you reconcile those feelings? I know Joe Biden wants to unite the country. He wants to restore the soul of the country. Said that a number of times. Where are you left, Chuck? You touched on it with all half the country, let's say.
I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts is Brene Brown's podcast, and she was talking with Melinda Gates on a recent one, and she was asking, and both Melinda Gates, and Brene Brown are very progressive people. And Brene asked Melinda, though, how she was kind of dealing with all that's happening right now. And Melinda Gates said something that to me just made a lot of sense. Other people have said this, but she did say that whether it's about politics or whatever the issue is, that she said you really, when it comes to opinions, you really need to listen more than you talk. And if you apply that to this situation, I just thought when some of the people that I disagree with start talking, rather than getting in there to make my point and make sure that they know where I stand, and I will always let people know where I stand, but I also thought, but it's also important to kind of sit there and listen and absorb and not immediately say, okay, well, the counter to that is, but rather just listen, take it in, and maybe say, I see where you're coming from. May not agree with it, but I see where you're coming from. Because I grew up with a lot of people in small town Texas that I went to high school with they're very nice people, and I got along with them great in high school. Since that time, I know that we have very little in common when I look back at some of their standings on things. But I don't necessarily feel like I need to counterattack once they say something. Again, it's kind of like, maybe I just listen.
I think that's great advice, and I think it's easier to do when Trump's not president. I'm just going to say it. Brent, what are your thoughts?
No, that's interesting that Chuck should say that, because I mean, people do kind of model the behavior that they see, and I think if we listen more, then they listen more. But I think back to when we were sitting here 4 years ago and how we felt and how devastated we were and sort of the ways that we felt, and so just being empathetic to that. We don't have to agree with them on extraneous policy or even far right or centrist policy, but I do understand what it feels like to have your candidate lose and to feel like, oh, we fought our best fight and we didn't get there. The difference being, the way we approach that loss and how we evaluate that loss. We looked at it and said, okay, we got to get our stuff together and get ready for the next election. I feel like this one is they're focusing more inward and saying, oh, well, it was stolen, or again, they were somehow the victim, much like they were the victim even after they won the last time. They were still a victim. So it's just interesting, the way that the different parties sort of react to it. But I am empathetic. I do understand that it's hard when your candidate loses, but you can't just focus on what you think you did right. Like you said, listen. They need to listen to both of us need to listen to each other, I guess, is sort of the ultimate point there. But yeah, it's hard not to be, excited, but just remember there were close to 80 million people or 74 million people that voted differently than us. Now, like you said, I don't think all of them voted simply because they were whatever phobia that we want to throw in there. A lot of them voted because that R was there and that's all they've ever voted, or they live in an area where that's sort of the group think. I was talking about this with some friends recently. There's a lot of good people that we know that didn't vote for Biden, but when you talk to them about why, they've got a lot of falsehoods that they quote as reasons why. So it's like, clearly they haven't been listening. So we've got to set that example and listen and just keep communicating. I mean, that's about the only way we're going to unite in any way.
Right. I'm with you. So we only have a minute left before we take a short break. I want you all, I know you're aware that Nashville Pride is hiring. For the first time, they are looking for their first executive director. It's amazing news. What does that tell you? The Nashville Pride is hiring. Brent?
I mean, it's super exciting, right? I mean, we've seen this progression now with other organizations throughout Nashville, and every time they reach a point where they're able to hire someone, it's almost like, okay, we've got strong footing. So I'm excited about it. I want to get the Pride folks on here pretty soon to get an update for everybody anyway. As far as we know, and you guys correct me, we're still looking at a September festival, right? That's kind of where we've been left. So I'm really anxious to find out more and sort of see what this role might entail for someone. But if I've thought of a few people already that I'm encouraging to apply.
Right. And if any of our viewers are interested, they should check out NashvillePride.org. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Chuck will lead us in a discussion on GLAAD's annual report on LGBTQ representation on primetime television. Stay with us.